It was a lot of torture that we went through. I've been thinking, maybe, did I really want to do this, or should I back out now? Didn't know if I wanted to open up this wound. But I'm here today. I'm ready to get it all out. Something I've been holding in for a long time. I waited this long because of the fear after the horrible murder she committed. I believe that if we crossed her, she could have killed us. What I think turned my mother into a murderer is greed. When my sister and I heard my mother say, "I'll see you dead before you get better," I was thinking she's not going to stop until it's over. This is a picture of my mother, my father, my older sister, my brother, and myself. Everyone in this picture looks innocent. Like nothing could ever happen. But the one evil person is sitting in this picture. And she took a lot from everybody that's in here. You would have never thought that she was that evil of a person just looking at her. But you had to really live with her and know her to know the evil she was. You're always afraid of something. Living in fear kind of makes you numb. You really don't know how to react to it. These were the good moments. These were the times that my father was in the home where we all felt safe. But it didn't last long. My parents argued a lot. They fought a lot too, physically fighting. She'd throw things at him. She would always threaten to harm him, bust his head open, or kill him in some type of way. She would say, "I wish God would take you now." We didn't think anything of it because I didn't know what she was gonna do. But I remember one time she made some brownies. And I was going in there to get one of the brownies. And when I grabbed one, she smacked it out of my hand.
"Don't you touch that. They're not for you."
And she said, "No, those are for your father." I never asked her why I couldn't have the brownie or anything. I just left it alone. She said we weren't allowed to have it. We weren't allowed to have it. She took one of the brownies out and put it on a saucer and went in there and gave it to him. My father eventually got sick from those brownies. He thought maybe he had a cold or a stomach virus, and he went to the hospital. I do remember him coming home and looking under the kitchen sink.
What is it?
Wasn't sure what he was looking for.
I know she has it in here.
Are you okay?
I'm okay.
He just said that he was pretty sick and he wasn't feeling good. He didn't let us know what happened. Didn't know until later on as I got older. When he went to the hospital, they said it was rat poison. And not too long after the brownie incident, my father left and my parents were divorced. I didn't know why he just left. This is a picture of my father. My father was a good person. For a while, she didn't let us go see our father, and then eventually we started going with him every other weekend. It broke my heart to see him go. I felt my father was the one that kept us together. He made sure we were all safe. My childhood was more like every child's nightmare. She kept us behind closed doors. Growing up, my mother was a nurse. She would work in a nursing home. And when she went into work, my mother started taking the phones out. She only left the one in her bedroom. And she would lock it up, so we wouldn't have access to call anybody.
This room is off limits.
She would put deadbolts on the doors, and she would be the only one that had the keys. Couldn't go to the front yard. Just went to school and back home. That was the only life we had. We weren't allowed to have friends or anything over. She said it was for our safety, but the neighborhood was not bad at all at that time. We were prisoners. This one particular time that my mother had locked us in the house, my sister was laying on the couch.
What are you doing?
And my brother was checking the back door, the front door, neither one we could open. Then he would go to the window, couldn't even get the window raised because it was nailed shut. And he just said, okay, I'm just done. He packed the bag with all his stuff. Broke the glass out of one of the windows and climbed out the window. But my sister and I, we never went out of the window at all. We waited. My mother, she was coming up the street at the time, and she seen him with the bag on his back walking down the street. And she picked him up, brought him back into the house, and then that's when she started beating us.
Get in there.
No, please, no.
Get in there.
No.
You think you're doing
Don't,
running out like
please.
that?
She would literally beat us with extension cords.
No, please,
Sometimes the cast iron frying pans. She would use 2x4s. Anything she could get her hands on. She would make sure that we hid the marks before we went to school so nobody could see them. It crossed my mind to show someone, but I didn't. My mother would give us a dead, cold stare that we knew, once she gave us that look, not to say anything. And my father knew nothing of anything that she was doing to us. My mother would tell us that if we said anything to our father, we would never see him again. So nobody knew anything that went on behind closed doors. It was almost like she had split personalities. One minute she would be fine, the next minute she would just be an evil person. Was one particular time I was playing basketball and I snapped both of my wrists, broke both of my arms. She had to actually bathe me.
How could you be so careless?
My mother was very angry at the time.
Now, everywhere we go, everybody's going to think I'm an abusive mother.
I'm sorry.
She never wanted anybody knowing anything that went on in her family.
Are you crying? Stop it!
She actually hit me and was saying that I needed to be quiet because I was crying. And then instead of rinsing it like she normally would, she pushed me under the water. was trying to drown me. She pushed me under the water. Not once, but twice. And the second time she held me under the water. So now I was fighting to get back up. She was holding me down pretty good. When I put my arm down in there and pushed myself up, that's how I got free. She never said she was sorry. I guess she just was hoping that I wasn't able to get back up. So after I did get up, I just got out of the tub and grabbed the towel to dry off. And like a day or so later after that, after I thought maybe the cast was dry, I had my brother cut that one off so I would be able to give myself baths. After my mother and father divorced, she had different male friends. My mother was a very beautiful woman. Men were very attracted to her. She had a charming side when she wanted to be. After my mother had dated several different men, my mother met Daniel No. And they knew each other maybe a couple weeks or so, and then they got married. She was happy, I thought, but then things turned. I don't know if it had to do with money problems, but she started arguing with them, and things just got worse from there. One morning I was getting ready for school, and normally Dan would see us to the door. And this morning he didn't. He stayed in the bed, said he just wasn't feeling well, and he'd see us when we got back home. We just thought maybe he had a cold, a virus or anything. It was like a couple hours into school. They were calling us. My sister had to come and pick us up because something had happened.
Mom? Mom? What's going on? What happened?
Oh, kids, I'm glad you're home. I have some bad news.
When we got home from school, as we walked in the door, my mother just told us Dan passed away.
What do you mean? What happened to him?
It was a heart attack. I was out at the store and I came home and he was gone.
We didn't see him. They had already came and picked his body up. We didn't know why or what had happened because he seemed normal when we left. To come home to find out that he passed away, not even a couple hours later, we were all shocked. But she didn't have any type of feelings. I mean, she wasn't crying or anything. She was still in her pajamas, and if you knew my mother, she wouldn't go out in just anything. So for her to say that she had went to the store and came back, we knew was not the truth. And then later, she was sitting in the living room calling to see about the insurance. I knew something wasn't right, but we weren't allowed to say anything or even ask any questions about it. We just had to take whatever she told us. My mother started dating a man named Lloyd. She seemed happy while they were dating. This is a picture of my mother and Lloyd. in the backyard. I would consider Lloyd as a father. He treated us as if we were his own. You could see Lloyd was a pretty healthy man. Like, nothing could be wrong. He pretty much took care of her, anything she wanted. I would say he spoiled her. We were happy that maybe finally she was gonna be happy. Maybe he could change her. That's what we were hoping for. She had the perfect man. But once they got married, things just started going sour.
Look at her how? How do I look at her? Tell me how I look at her.
You look at her like you want her.
One day, my mom and Lloyd were in their bedroom, and you could hear them in there arguing.
You do this every single time. Every single time you do this. It's all in your head.
She knew that he was cheating on her and that she had proof.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Lloyd told her that it was ridiculous and it was just a co-worker. And when he went to step to go around her,
You know, I don't have to stand here and take this.
that's when she sprayed him with the bug spray in the face.
You're not gonna make a fool out of me again.
She sprayed enough in there to get into his eyes. I was stunned when I seen her do it. My reaction was to try to help him, and that's why I said, what is going on?
You,
And that's when she pushed me out of the way and then shut the door.
get out. This is none of your business.
My mother didn't have any sympathy for anything or anybody. But Lloyd was not a confrontational person. Lloyd would do anything for my mother. Anything she wanted, he gave it to her. So he stayed. He started having symptoms like cold symptoms and stuff like that. And then he started getting a little weaker. Like he wasn't fighting off the cold.
Lloyd, I brought you some water.
Oh, thank you, sweetie.
He just kept getting sicker and sicker.
How are you feeling today?
Yeah, a little better.
He pretty much stayed in the bed. He started losing weight. Nothing was helping him.
Maybe we can go to that new coffee shop you were talking about.
Maybe you should just rest.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I remember this one time, she had just picked up the medicine from the pharmacy.
Hi, yes. I'm calling about the prescription.
She called the pharmacy and said that she needed more pain meds for him.
The most ridiculous thing happened. I accidentally dropped it down the sink. I know how these things happen, right?
My sister and I knew that it wasn't true. She didn't drop them down the drain. She still had a whole bottle sitting on the sink in the bathroom. But we didn't know that she was giving him double of the pain medicine than what he was supposed to be getting. And that was what was keeping him down more.
Is there any way we could possibly refill it? You can. Terrific, terrific.
But I told my mom Lloyd wasn't getting any better, and shouldn't we call the doctor? And she said no, she's doing everything that the doctor told her to do.
I will be there in the hour.
My mother was a nurse, so we figured she knew what she was doing as far as getting more pain medicine for him.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye.
I read it in the newspaper. They were calling her the Black Widow because it was multiple men. We didn't know what my mother was gonna do next. If she was gonna try to poison us as well. My older older sister and my brother were not living with us anymore. It was just me and my younger sister. Lloyd's condition would go up and down. He still wasn't doing well. Lloyd and I had a good relationship.
Morning.
Good morning.
I had to be about 16, and I think my mother felt threatened because it seemed like the closer he got to us, the more she pushed us away. Lloyd and I would drink coffee every morning and eat toast. That's what our routine was. But this one particular morning, before I could even sit down to drink my coffee, I could smell something, but I wasn't sure what it was, like a minty smell. Lloyd slapped the cup of coffee out of my hand and said, "Don't drink it." I was shocked. I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "There's something wrong with the coffee."
What's going on in here?
My mother, she came in when she heard the cup hit the floor because it shattered.
The coffee, it isn't right. This must have gone bad or something.
When she seen that neither one of us drank it, she wasn't happy about it. She just turned around and went back to the bedroom. He just took the coffee pot and threw it away. The only ones in the house that drank the coffee were Lloyd and I. We were the only two that drank coffee. Even though I thought my mother may have put something in the coffee pot, I didn't mention it to Lloyd. We knew not to open our mouth and say anything about anything she did. There was no way I could tell him out of fear for our safety. Not only mine, but my sister's as well. It was cold outside, and they were talking about a snowstorm. My mother was reading the newspaper. There was a newspaper article in there telling about to keep the antifreeze away from the animals. If they drink so much of it, it'll harm them or kill them. And then a few seconds later, she sent us to the store to purchase some antifreeze. We figured she was sending us to the store to get antifreeze for the cars. My sister told me that my mother was putting antifreeze in Lloyd's drink.
I think she's gonna poison Lloyd. No, that's not possible.
And I just looked at her and I said, "What?"
You have to believe me. You have to come with me right now.
So when she said just to watch her when she comes back to make his drink again, that's what I did. And she wasn't discreet about it. I mean, she was just at the kitchen counter with his soda. And we heard her mumble under her breath, "This is how I'm gonna finish him off." And then she poured antifreeze in there. She knew whatever she did, we wouldn't say nothing. We didn't have any phones. Doors were locked. And even though we were a little older at this time, we still knew not to cross her. So I didn't mention it to Lloyd. And then she just started giving him more antifreeze, and then he went downhill from there. This is a picture of Lloyd. You can see that he's lost some weight. This is around the time that he stopped being able to get up on his own. I don't even know why she took a picture of him like this. I don't know what my mother was thinking of. Lloyd got pretty weak to where he couldn't get up and down to the bathroom on his own. So one of us would always help him, being me or my sister.
Easy. You doing any better?
No, not really. I don't know what's wrong.
This one particular time, he said he had to get up and go to the bathroom. And once I got him up, my mom just took the baseball bat that was beside the bed and hit him across his back. I didn't even see her pull the baseball bat out until it actually hit him, because his eyes rolled in the back of his head and he just fell back on the bed. I thought for sure he was gone then. I didn't even see her pull the baseball bat out until it actually hit him. My sister and I both hollered when we heard the bat hit his back. His eyes rolled in the back of his head and he just fell back on the bed. I thought for sure he was gone. I was telling her that we needed to call the doctor. That's when she told me, no, nobody's calling the doctor.
Don't even think about it.
I don't think my mother cared anything about what we saw at this point, because I don't think she thought we would ever say anything against her. She told us to leave him alone and just leave the room.
Both of you, out of here.
And as we were leaving the room, that's when she told him that she would see him dead before he got better. When she said that, my sister and I just walked on down the hallway. We didn't even say anything to each other. I was thinking she's not gonna stop until it's over, until she actually has him gone. But we couldn't tell anybody anything. Couldn't call the police department, couldn't do anything. We were scared. Scared of our mother. My mother was sitting on the couch, just looking at a magazine, and when we came in, she just said, "Oh, Lloyd is gone," and she didn't say anything else.
Lloyd's dead.
What do you mean he's dead?
She said, "Yeah, he's gone." No feelings, she wasn't crying, she wasn't doing anything.
Where is he?
He's upstairs.
I didn't actually believe her, that's why I went back there to check. The pillow that was actually laying next to him was actually over his face. My thoughts was she just suffocated him. Just went on and finished it like that. He wasn't in no way able to protect himself. He couldn't even move at this time. Couldn't even raise an arm. The image of him laying there, just seeing him laying there and not moving or breathing, it'll never leave my mind. It's always gonna be there.
We have to call an ambulance.
No. Nobody's calling anyone yet.
She wouldn't let us call for the ambulance. She had already cleaned him up and had a electric blanket on him to keep his body warm. So they don't know how long he's been gone. By the time she called the ambulance, he had been gone about 2 hours or so. But when the ambulance came, the guy asked her, "How long has he been gone?" And she said, "About 15 minutes, about the time it took for me to call you and you guys to get here." But when they turned him over, he had like blue splotches on his back. And they said, "No, he's been dead longer than 15 minutes.
No, he's been gone for a while.
That's not possible. His body, it's still warm.
And he said, no, ma'am, the splotches on his back lets us know that he's been gone for more than 2 hours.
The blood has already started pooling. And rigor mortis is starting to set in.
She didn't say anything. She just let them take him, and then she followed behind. His father was still alive, and he had a sister and a brother. But my mother wouldn't let anybody come. It was just her and us. My mother never cried. She never showed any type of emotion. I felt hurt, of course, but probably more relief for him. So he didn't have to be tortured anymore. And he was in a better place. And we all went back home. My mother just went on like nothing happened. We didn't know what her next move was. You know, she had just killed our stepfather. And acting like she didn't do anything, like nothing was wrong. So we didn't know which way she was gonna go next. There was 2 detectives that came to the house. I don't know if they got a feeling that something wasn't right. So they sat down and wanted to ask us a couple questions.
We'd just like to ask you a few questions about Lloyd.
Okay.
Did we know how Lloyd died?
Would you say Lloyd was a healthy person?
I don't know.
And she was sitting looking at us. So we knew not to say anything because of the stare that she was giving us.
Tell you what, this is my card.
And before they left, they gave us a card and said if there was anything else we knew or we remembered to give them a call.
Thank you. We will.
My heart went to my stomach. So I thought, oh God, what is she gonna do now? Who's to say she wasn't gonna come after us next? We didn't know what my mother was gonna do next. If she was gonna try to poison us as well. When the detectives had came out to the house, they left us a card. And he said if it was anything we needed to call him. But we couldn't talk to anybody. We had no phones, doors were locked.
Hello?
But one day, my mother had rushed out of the house to go do something in the city, and she took my sister with her.
Honey, come on. We have to go. We have to go. Come on.
When they left, my mother forgot to take the phone out of the kitchen. So I went and got that card, and I called to ask for the detective and told him that I may have the evidence of what my mother used to kill Lloyd.
Can you come over? I have the proof.
He said, I'm coming right over. I was scared of our mother, and I was just hoping they would hurry and get there before my mother did. If they had it came after she came, I didn't know what was gonna happen.
Thank you for coming. It's this way.
And when he came, that's when I took him to the bottle that had the antifreeze in it.
I've seen her put this in his drink.
She had it labeled on there, do not drink. That's when I told the whole story.
This isn't the first time something like this has happened.
That she had been giving him antifreeze over a period of months trying to kill him.
You did the right thing calling us.
And then they took us down to the police station. They arrested her and brought her down to the station. But the only evidence the detectives had at the time was my word and the bottle. Because Lloyd didn't have an autopsy or anything. They said that they had to let her out.
It's all kind of up in the air right now.
But didn't you talk to my sister already?
When they told me my mother was released, my heart went to my stomach. So I thought, oh God, you know, what is she gonna do now?
I'm sorry, Norma. There's just not enough concrete evidence to hold your mother.
I knew she knew, or she had to know that I said something.
You can't let her go. She's gonna figure out I called you.
I believe that she could have really harmed us, maybe even killed us.
Listen, Norma, don't worry. We're gonna take care of you. Nobody's gonna get to you.
So they took me out of the home and took me down to my boyfriend's family's home. And that's where I stayed. When the detectives had Lloyd's body exhumed, his body was saturated with the antifreeze. And once everything came out with Lloyd, then my father came forward with my mother poisoning him with the brownies. They had the proof and that they did arrest her for the murder of Lloyd. I felt a sense of relief. She's finally caught. She can't hurt anybody else. This is a picture of my mother when she was arrested. She doesn't look very happy in this picture. She really looks a little worried. Looking at this picture, it gives me a sense of freedom. She lost all her control. It was a big relief off of my chest. She's never gonna come home. I felt Lloyd got his justice. But Dan's family had them exhume his body, and they found out that Dan had died of natural causes. I don't believe it. I believe she did have something to do with it. But we'll never know. Even after all the torture she put us through, put Lloyd through, I felt I still needed to see her.
You look good.
Thanks. So do you.
I was hoping maybe she would at least come out and tell the truth about what she did.
I have to ask you.
I don't know how many times I have to tell you it wasn't my fault.
But the whole time, she was still saying she didn't do it. She didn't want to say anything about it.
I'm not talking about this any further.
I had to get up and use the restroom.
I'll be right back.
And I had a soda that I was drinking. I left the soda can sitting on the table, and when I came back and drank some, I got real dizzy, real lightheaded.
Something wrong?
I thought she had put something in my soda while I was in the restroom.
Is everything okay?
So I said, no, I need to go ahead and go. I went to the emergency room and told them that I thought I had been poisoned, but nothing was found in the blood work or anything. Everything was okay. And they said that all I had was a panic attack. Even though the hospital told me nothing was wrong, I still felt that my mother had put something in my drink while I was there. And I was still thinking, how could it be a panic attack when it didn't happen until after I drank it? I just couldn't shake it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I knew then that I was never going to go back. That day was the last time I saw my mother. I believe my mother passed away of a heart condition. I actually just felt numb. I didn't cry. No feelings at all. This is the way I choose to remember him. He seemed really happy in this picture. Healthy. He would be proud to know that I did this for him. Just to let people know the true story behind it. I made a promise to him to make sure I always took care of people. So today, because of Lloyd making that promise to him.
They say the desert keeps its secrets, that the wind sweeping across the barren plains knows more stories than the people who live there. But on a cold morning in 1997, just outside a quiet Arizona town, the silence cracked open like a buried vault. A hiker wandering off the trail near a dry ravine stumbled upon something that didn't belong to the desert, something pale, half hidden beneath sand and sunburned brush. At first he thought it was an old animal carcass, but when the shifting light revealed the unmistakable curve of a human skull, the cold air in his lungs turned razor sharp. No name, no clues, no explanation, just a lonely set of bones staring up at the sky, as if waiting for someone to finally look back. Sirens sliced through the morning haze, dust spiraling behind patrol cars as deputies descended on the ravine. The sheriff's department taped off the area, their radios crackling with the kind of tension that only appears when the unexpected hits a community that thought it knew every shadow within its borders. Officers crouched low, brushing away sand, uncovering fragments of a life interrupted, shredded clothing, a rusted necklace pendant, the faint outline of someone whose final moments had dissolved into the quiet earth. There were no missing person reports matching the remains. No neighbors whispered about someone who had vanished without a trace. The desert had given up a body, but not a story. As investigators scoured the scene, the chilling truth spread across town faster than wildfire. A cold case had just been born, and it arrived with no welcome, no warning, only questions that hooked into the community's nerves and refused to let go. By noon, locals gathered at the edge of the police lines, eyes wide with fear, wrapped in curiosity. Mothers pulled their children closer. Retirees whispered theories. Teenagers recorded shaky videos for early internet forums. The town wasn't used to being on the map for anything more than its cactus-lined highways and slow sunsets. Now, it was the center of a mystery that felt too dark, too abrupt, too intrusive. The medical examiner's team transported the remains to the lab, their gloves powdered with desert dust. Under fluorescent lights, the bones told fragments of the truth. The victim was likely a woman in her early 20s, dead for more than a year. No signs of animal disturbance suggested she died somewhere else, then was moved. A single fracture near the skull hinted at blunt force trauma, but the desert had swallowed everything else. No fingerprints, no soft tissue, no easily identifiable markers. Whoever she was, her voice had been erased long before anyone found her. Detectives began combing through state records, cross-checking old reports, digging for forgotten leads. They interviewed shelters, hospitals, college campuses, even truck stops stretching dozens of miles along the interstate. Nothing. It was as though she had lived in silence and died in exile. And the more investigators pushed, the more the town felt the cold fingers of unease wrap around it. Arizona had seen its share of strange disappearances, but this one clung to the air differently, like a storm cloud that refused to move. Community meetings filled with speculation and fear. Was there a killer in their midst? Was this some traveler who crossed the wrong path at the wrong moment? Or was this someone who had been missing right under their noses, unnoticed until the desert itself forced them to see her? Theories multiplied, but answers remained elusive. The few clues they had, the pendant, the clothing scraps, led nowhere. Jewelry stores didn't recognize the design. The pattern on the fabric matched dozens of generic brands. The the case files thickened, but the conclusions thinned, stretched across pages filled with question marks and dead ends. In the weeks that followed, deputies retraced every trail leading into and out of town. They interviewed hikers, ranchers, travelers. One rancher claimed he heard screaming late one night the previous year, but couldn't pinpoint where it came from. A trucker insisted he saw a young woman hitchhiking along Highway 87, but he wasn't sure of the month or even the year. A waitress remembered serving someone who kind of looked like her, but the memory dissolved when pressed for details. Hints flickered, then vanished. Nothing held firm. The sheriff, a man known for his steady voice and calm demeanor, began to feel the pressure tightening like a noose. Reporters arrived from Phoenix and beyond, flashing cameras, firing questions. Headlines blared. Unidentified body found in desert. Local cold case stuns small town. A community that once prided itself on being untouched by big city chaos was now thrust into the spotlight, and the glare was relentless. Rumors multiplied, some whispering that the victim was a runaway, others insisting it was the work of a serial predator passing through. Each theory carried weight, each fear found a place to root itself. The sheriff's department released a sketch reconstructed from the skull, hoping someone, somewhere, would recognize her. The drawing was broadcast on local TV, pinned to bulletin boards, printed in newspapers. People stared at it, searching for familiarity, but the face seemed to belong to no one. A ghost drawn from bone, a stranger disguised as memory. And with every passing day, the sketch faded from the community's priority list, even as the unease remained. Months turned into years. The case files moved from the front desk to the archive room, sealed in boxes labeled with dates and signatures. New crimes demanded attention, new emergencies stole resources. New faces joined the department, unaware of the unsolved riddle lurking in the back of their records. Yet some officers, especially those who had been there when the remains were first found, couldn't shake the feeling that something had been missed. They'd revisit the ravine from time to time, standing silently at the edge, listening to the desert wind as if it might finally speak. But the desert never spoke, it only waited. Rumors of the case still drifted through the town like dry leaves. Teachers mentioned it during late-night conversations. Former deputies discussed it over beers. Some locals claimed the area was cursed, that the ravine was a place where unlucky souls vanished. Others said it was nothing more than a tragic accident that would never be solved. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. The discovery had changed the town. The desert no longer felt empty. It felt watchful. Every once in a while, a new piece of information would flicker into existence. Someone calling from out of state, someone claiming to know a missing woman, someone thinking the sketch resembled an old friend. Investigators chased each lead, digging through old addresses, interviewing distant relatives, checking databases. Every promising clue collapsed under scrutiny. The victim remained nameless, and with her namelessness came a strange kind of power, an eerie presence that threaded itself into local lore. Some called her the Desert Jane Doe. Others simply referred to her as the girl in the ravine. Years chipped away at the edges of the case. Officers retired, children grew up, the town expanded, new shops opened, new roads cut across the land, new families moved into quiet neighborhoods. From the outside, life looked normal, steady, predictable, uneventful. But beneath that surface, the unsolved death still pulsed like a scar trapped under the skin. People avoided the ravine after sunset. Drivers kept their windows rolled up on lonely stretches of highway. Hikers stuck to marked paths, glancing over their shoulders when the wind shifted strangely. For those who remembered the discovery, the case became synonymous with unfinished business, a cold shadow cast over warm desert days. It became a symbol of how fragile life could be, how easily a person could vanish, how brutally the world could forget someone. The sheriff, now older and slower, still kept the pendant on his desk, its metal bent and faded. Sometimes he'd turn it over in his hand, wondering who it belonged to, what story it once represented, and why no one ever came looking for her. The community tried to move forward, but the cold case lingered, chilling the air every time someone mentioned it. It was a constant reminder that answers don't always come when you need them, that justice doesn't always arrive on schedule, that some mysteries don't unravel until something shifts, an accident, a confession, a discovery. And on a very different morning, many years later, that shift was about to happen. But in 1997, no one knew what was buried deeper than the bones in the desert. No one imagined how far the shadow stretched. No one predicted the breakthrough that would one day rip this story open and shake the entire community to its core. For now, the desert kept its silence, and the town learned to live with a ghost. Night falls differently in the Arizona desert. It doesn't simply dim, it descends. A heavy curtain of darkness drops over the landscape, swallowing shapes, muting colors, turning familiar trails into black veins twisting through nothingness. On the night after the discovery of the remains, that darkness felt deeper, heavier, almost sentient. Patrol cars idled near the station as deputies lingered longer than usual, reluctant to step back into the silent streets. Even the neon lights of the diner flickered strangely, as if sensing the unrest simmering beneath the surface. Inside the station, Detective Caleb Merritt hovered over the case file, flipping through the photographs one by one. Grainy shots of the ravine, close-ups of bone fragments, the tattered scraps of clothing sealed inside evidence bags. The reconstructed sketch sat on the desk, its charcoal eyes staring through him, asking questions he could not answer. Caleb had worked dozens of cases in his career, but something about this one crawled under his skin. Not the brutality, not the mystery, but the void surrounding the victim. No history, no identity, no one searching for her. It was as if she had lived her entire life invisible, only to remain unseen in death. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing the tension from his forehead as the hum of fluorescent lights filled the quiet room. In the corner, a radio crackled with dispatch chatter, routine calls, traffic stops, minor disturbances. Life outside continued steady and indifferent, while inside the station, the weight of the unknown pressed down like a stone. Caleb glanced again at the pendant, a small oval-shaped charm with a design too worn to decipher. Some officers thought it might be decorative. Caleb thought otherwise. Items like this weren't worn randomly. They meant something to someone. But that someone was out there somewhere, unaware that a single necklace was all that remained of a life lost in the sand. He stood abruptly, grabbing his keys. The walls felt too close. He needed space to think, and in this town, space was easy to find. Minutes later, he was driving along the empty highway, the desert stretching endlessly on both sides, moonlight shimmering across the hardpan like broken glass. He made his way toward the ravine, the place where the mystery had started, where it now demanded answers. When he arrived, the night air hung still, thick with dust and silence. The police tape fluttered weakly in the breeze, glowing faintly under his flashlight as he ducked beneath it. Caleb walked toward the shallow dip in the earth where the remains had been found. Now, it was nothing more than an indentation in the sand, a scar left behind by tragedy. He crouched, brushing his fingers across the cold ground, imagining the victim lying there, exposed, forgotten, hidden from the world for over a year. Something gnawed at him, something about the placement of the body, too deliberate to be random, too exposed to be a typical attempt at hiding a crime. Whoever left her there didn't care if she was found. Or maybe they wanted her found, but only after time had erased the truth. He stood slowly, scanning the darkness, listening to the wind move through the brush. It whispered, faint and erratic, like a voice trying to reach him from somewhere far beyond the present moment. He exhaled, shook off the feeling, and returned to his car. By morning, the town's unease had grown sharper. The local newspaper ran a headline that slapped readers awake. Ravine discovery shocks community. Unidentified victim sparks cold case fear. At the diner, conversations buzzed over steaming cups of coffee. Some swore they remembered hearing strange noises near the ravine months earlier. Others claimed they'd seen suspicious vehicles. A few insisted the desert was haunted, and the victim was a warning. Fear mixed with fascination. And fascination drew people closer to the edges of the mystery, even as fear urged them to keep their distance. Caleb arrived at the station early, determined to find something, anything that could break the case open. He dove deep into missing person archives, flipping through faded photos and outdated reports. Women who vanished during road trips, runaways who disappeared without a trace, tourists who lost their way and never returned. Yet none matched the Jane Doe in the ravine. Deputy Marlene Torres joined him, her arms stacked with old files. She was younger, newer to the department, but sharp, a mind that noticed details others often missed. She placed the files on the desk. "These are reports from the surrounding counties," she said. "Cases from 95 and 96. Some are incomplete. Thought you might want to take a look." Caleb nodded, grateful. They sifted through the reports together, page after page of names, ages, locations. But once again, the trail dissolved. "It's like she never existed," Marlene murmured. "Everyone exists to someone," Caleb replied. "We just haven't found the right someone yet." But the truth was beginning to feel heavier. What if she wasn't from Arizona? What if she had been brought here, taken across state lines, dropped into the desert to disappear forever? The thought chilled the room, and neither of them voiced it out loud. By late afternoon, Caleb decided to revisit the pendant. He drove to a small jewelry shop run by an elderly craftsman known for identifying obscure designs. The man squinted at the pendant through a magnifying lens, his fingers trembling slightly as he traced the faded grooves. "I've seen similar patterns," he muttered. "Not store-bought, handcrafted maybe. Could be from a roadside artisan, or tied to a local group. Hard to say with this much wear." He shrugged helplessly. Another dead end. The sun dipped low as Caleb left the shop, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. shadows that felt as though they were following him, stretching across the road like spectral fingers. He drove back to the station, mind buzzing with unanswered questions. That evening, the sheriff called an emergency meeting. Officers gathered in the briefing room, tension clinging to their uniforms like dust. The sheriff's voice was stern as he reviewed the facts, urging the team to push harder, think differently, search deeper. But frustration seeped through every word. They were chasing ghosts, chasing whispers, chasing a story that refused to reveal itself. As the meeting ended, Caleb lingered behind, staring at the evidence board. The sketch, the bones, the pendant, the ravine photos, all pinned together, forming a puzzle with too many missing pieces. Marlene walked up beside him. "Maybe we need to look outside the county," she suggested. "What if her family isn't local? What if she was traveling, a drifter, a nomad, someone passing through?" "Maybe," Caleb said quietly, "but someone, somewhere, must have noticed her disappearance. And yet, no one's called." They stood in silence, each lost in thought. Outside, darkness settled once more across the land. In the days that followed, new whispers began to surface. A truck driver claimed he remembered seeing a young woman near a rest stop the year before. A motel clerk insisted she checked in with a man but left alone. A gas station attendant recalled selling fuel to a nervous-looking pair, though he couldn't describe their faces clearly. All of them seemed to remember something, but each memory was like smoke slipping through fingers. Caleb and Marlene chased every lead, driving long distances along forgotten roads, interviewing people who were unsure of their own stories. They collected scraps of information, fragments of possibilities, each one contradicting the last. The timeline blurred, the locations shifted. What had initially seemed like paths toward the truth slowly revealed themselves as loops leading right back into the unknown. Then came a chilling discovery. While reviewing photos from the scene once more, Marlene noticed a faint disturbance near the edge of the ravine. Not a footprint, but something that looked like tire marks, partly erased by time. The tracks were too shallow to analyze, too old to identify, but they pointed in one direction. Someone had driven close to the ravine. Someone had stopped there. Someone had left. The revelation tightened the knot in Caleb's chest. "This wasn't a random dump site," he said, staring at the photos. "Someone chose this spot intentionally. But why here? Why in plain sight? Why not deeper into the desert?" Marlene swallowed hard. Unless they thought they were far enough already. The room felt colder. Everything felt colder. With renewed urgency, the detectives expanded their search zone, mapping the area surrounding the ravine, analyzing old satellite images, interviewing anyone who might have driven through that region in the last 2 years. But again, the leads thinned out. The case was slipping away. And then, after weeks of fevered effort, the investigation stalled completely. The community's fear dulled into resignation. Interest faded, reporters left, new stories took the spotlight, and the victim, the young woman with no name, became a ghost once more. Yet the silence didn't bring peace. It brought something darker, an unspoken truth that the town tried desperately to ignore. Some mysteries don't fade with time. They spread, they settle, they wait. And this one waited for years, quiet, patient, hidden beneath layers of memory and dust. Until one day, long after everyone believed the Desert Girl's story had reached its end, something surfaced that would shatter everything they thought they knew. The years crawled forward, slow and merciless, eroding the urgency that once electrified the town. Seasons passed, shifting from blistering summers to brittle winters, each one burying the cold case deeper under layers of everyday life. New families moved in, old ones drifted away, and the ravine where the young woman was found became just another stretch of forgotten desert. Avoided, whispered about, but no longer the center of fear. People stopped checking the bulletin boards with her sketch pinned to the top corner. Shop owners threw out old newspaper clippings. Even law enforcement, despite their lingering guilt, found themselves turning toward fresher urgencies. But some cases refuse to die quietly. They linger like dust in the air, too fine to see, too persistent to escape, and sometimes all it takes is a moment, an accident, a coincidence, a shift in fate to pull the past screaming back into the present. It happened on a stormy evening in late autumn, long after most residents had given up hope that the Desert Girl's identity would ever be uncovered. Thunder rolled across the sky, rattling windows as rain hammered the streets, rare, violent rain that smelled of electricity and old secrets. Inside a small community center where the local high school was hosting a charity event, people crowded together, laughing, eating, unaware that something extraordinary was about to unfold in a quiet corner of the room. A young volunteer named Sarah Keller, a college student home for the break, was sorting donated clothing when she found a box labeled simply, "Old Items, to be reviewed." She opened it casually, pulling out scarves, jackets, faded shirts. But at the bottom lay something that made her hands freeze midair, a necklace pendant, oval-shaped, worn around the edges. It was nearly identical to the one found on the Jane Doe. Sarah felt a prickling sensation run down her spine. The design, faint swirls etched into the metal, matched the news photos she'd seen years ago. She hadn't thought of that case in ages. Few had. But the pendant's resemblance was unmistakable, like an echo pulled from the desert itself. Her breath hitched. She carried the pendant to the event organizer, an elderly woman named Trudy, known for keeping meticulous records of donations. This wasn't supposed to be in the pile, Sarah said. Do you know where it came from? Trudy adjusted her glasses, squinting at the pendant. That box came from an estate sale, she murmured. A house on Silver Creek Road, belonged to a man who passed away last year. What was his name? Sarah asked. Trudy thought for a moment. Harlan, Kenneth Harlan. The name meant nothing to Sarah, but something about the sudden heaviness in the room told her it should. She ran her thumb across the pendant again, the cool metal pressing into her skin like a warning. Should she call the police? Was this even evidence? Or just a coincidence? A common trinket from a roadside stand? But coincidences rarely carried this kind of weight. Within hours, the sheriff's department received a formal report. Deputy Marlene Torres, now a few years older but still sharp as ever, was the first to respond. She held the pendant under the fluorescent lights, comparing it to the original from the cold case. Her pulse quickened. The patterns were nearly identical, hand-etched, uneven, unmistakably crafted by the same person. This was no coincidence. She immediately called Caleb Merritt. When Caleb arrived at the station, wind still clinging to his jacket from the storm outside, he stared at the pendant like it was a ghost, resurrected. He hadn't seen the original in years, but its image had burned itself into his memory. Where did they find this? He asked quietly. Marlene explained everything, the estate sale, the donation, the connection to Kenneth Harlan. Caleb's expression hardened. We need to know who he was, where he traveled, who he knew. They pulled up county records, scanning through Harlan's history. He'd lived alone on the outskirts of town. Retired mechanic. No children, no spouse. But one detail lodged itself like a shard of glass. He owned a truck during the years the cold case victim likely died. A truck that matched several vague witness descriptions from old interviews. Caleb inhaled slowly, trying to steady the tremor rising in his chest. If Harlan was connected directly or indirectly, this was the first real movement in the case in over a decade. But they needed more. They needed context. They drove to Harlan's old property at dawn. The storm had passed, leaving behind a bruised purple sky and puddles reflecting shards of morning light. The house stood worn but intact, its windows streaked with dust and rain. A for sale sign leaned crookedly in the yard, half buried in mud. Inside, the air felt stale, thick with the scent of old wood and abandonment. Furniture was draped in sheets. Boxes were stacked in corners. A faint hum filled the silence, the sound of a refrigerator that hadn't yet died. Caleb and Marlene split up, searching room by room. It didn't take long before Marlene called out, her voice low but urgent. Caleb, you need to see this. He followed her into a back room, Harlan's workshop. Tools hung neatly on the walls. Cabinets were labeled in precise handwriting. But what drew Caleb's attention wasn't the workbench or the shelves. It was the collection of handcrafted pendants hanging from a wooden pegboard. Dozens of them, each one slightly different, each one etched by hand, each one matching the design found on the Jane Doe. Caleb exhaled sharply. The air seemed to tighten around him. This is it, he whispered. He made these. He made hers. But the relief of discovery quickly twisted into something darker. If Harlan crafted the pendant worn by the victim, what was his connection to her? A friend, an acquaintance, something worse? As they searched deeper, they found journals, stacks of them. But the handwriting was erratic, fragmented, almost unintelligible. Lists of names, sketches of faces, maps of roads stretching through the desert, no context, no explanations, just chaos on paper. Then Marlene found a photograph, an old faded Polaroid tucked inside a drawer. It showed Kenneth Harlan standing beside a young woman with long hair, smiling awkwardly at the camera. Dust clung to the edges, but the image was clear enough to see the necklace around her neck. Caleb felt his pulse roar in his ears. It's her, Marlene said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was their Jane Doe. Alive, smiling, standing in Harlan's workshop. A shockwave ran through Caleb's mind. The photo proved they knew each other, maybe more, but there was something off about the woman's smile. Something forced, something frightened beneath the surface. Her eyes didn't match her expression. Suddenly, the case wasn't just a mystery. It was a story of someone who had been trapped, someone whose last years may have been spent in the shadow of a man who kept more secrets than anyone had guessed. Why would he keep this? Marlene asked. Why hide it? Caleb didn't answer. He felt the floor beneath him shift metaphorically, as if the entire investigation had just snapped into a new, terrifying direction. They boxed up everything, pendants, journals, photographs, and brought them to the station for analysis. The medical examiner's team revisited the remains. Forensic specialists were brought in. The investigation awakened with a ferocity that hadn't been seen in town for years. And the community felt it. Whispers spread quickly. Some remembered Kenneth Harlan as quiet, polite, solitary. Others said he'd always been strange, unpredictable. A few claimed they'd seen him arguing with a young woman years ago, but they'd dismissed it as a misunderstanding. Now every memory felt like a potential clue or a potential regret. Meanwhile, Caleb found himself returning again and again to the Polaroid. The way she stood, slightly turned inward. The way Harlan's hand hovered too close to her shoulder. The way her smile never reached her eyes. This wasn't a chance encounter. This wasn't a stranger passing through. She had known him, and she hadn't been safe. But there was still no name, no confirmation, no clear timeline. Until they opened one of Harlan's final journals, a scribbled, chaotic mess, and found a single sentence circled repeatedly as if he'd written it in a frenzy. I didn't mean to hurt her. No context, no explanation, just guilt carved into paper. Caleb felt his stomach twist. If Harlan had killed her, intentionally or accidentally, why hide her body? Why take the pendant? Why keep the photo? Unless he couldn't let go. Unless his guilt had consumed him, and the journals were the only place he could speak the truth. But one question clawed harder than the rest. If Harlan killed her, why had no one noticed she was missing? Why hadn't anyone looked for her? Who was she? The answer came from an unexpected source. A call from a woman in New Mexico, a trembling voice, one sentence that froze the entire station. I think the girl in your photo might be my sister. The phone call came in just after sunset, when the sky over Arizona bled into streaks of rust and violet. The station was quieter than usual, the kind of lull that settles in when paperwork has taken over and officers wait for the night shift's first emergency. Caleb was reviewing Harlan's journals, pages soaked in paranoia, when the dispatcher waved him over with urgency, tightening her features. She wants to talk directly to you, the dispatcher whispered. She says it's about the girl in the Polaroid. Caleb picked up the receiver, his throat suddenly dry. This is Detective Merritt. The voice on the other end trembled like brittle glass. My name is Elena Reyes. I saw the photo on the news. The girl standing next to that man. I think she's my sister. My little sister. Her name is Marisol. The name hit the air like a dropped match. Caleb closed his eyes briefly, steadying himself. A name, after all these years. A name. How long has she been missing? He asked gently. Since 1996. Elena swallowed hard. She was 22. She used to travel, drift from place to place. She said she wanted to see everything before settling down. She called me all the time, no matter where she went. Then the calls stopped, overnight, and every police report I filed went nowhere. Her voice cracked. Everyone said she probably ran off, that she'd come back when she was done wandering. But I knew something was wrong. I felt it, and now that picture. Caleb felt the weight of the case shift, pressing heavier into his shoulders. Elena, I need to ask you some questions. Did Marisol ever mention a man named Kenneth Harlan? No, Elena said quickly, never. But she met people everywhere. She trusted too easily. She believed in kindness, even when she shouldn't have. A silence stretched between them, pulsing with grief and recognition. Can you come to Arizona? Caleb asked softly. We'll need confirmation, and we'll need to talk in person. I'll drive tonight, she said. I won't wait another day. When the call ended, Caleb remained still, gripping the receiver, the echo of the name Marisol looping through his mind. A name turned the ghost in the ravine into a human again. A woman with a family, a sister, dreams, a life cut short in the desert. But with the name came something else, a sense of dread, because if Marisol Reyes had truly been connected to Harlan, they were no longer looking at a tragic accident or a random act. They were staring into the heart of something far more deliberate. Marlene rushed in moments later, her eyes searching Caleb's face. What happened? We might have her identity, he said, but we need proof. Marlene nodded. I'll alert the medical examiner. DNA testing, dental comparison, we'll prepare everything. As she hurried away, Caleb gazed again at the Polaroid, Marisol's uneasy smile, Harlan's hand too close, the dusty workshop behind them. Every detail screamed a truth he wasn't ready to say aloud. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a stranger's death. This was a story intertwined with the life of a man who hid his secrets in locked rooms and handwritten confessions. Hours passed. Night deepened. The station lights flickered as the wind picked up again, whistling through the eaves like a warning. Caleb worked relentlessly, piecing together everything they knew about Harlan. Where he lived, where he traveled, who he met. He dug through receipts, found old repair logs, tracked motel stays. The timeline was patchy, but one thing was clear. Harlan had been on the road often, crisscrossing through Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada. It was entirely possible their paths had crossed far from this town. Near midnight, Caleb stepped outside for air. The town lay quiet beneath a blanket of deep indigo. Porch lights glowed softly, and the smell of wet earth from the recent storm lingered. He stared out toward the desert, where darkness pooled like spilled ink. Somewhere out there, years ago, Marisol had taken her last breath, alone, unheard, unfound, until the earth gave her back. He clenched his jaw, feeling the case tighten its grip on him. By dawn, Elena Reyes arrived. She walked into the station with exhaustion draped over her like a heavy coat, eyes red, hair pulled back hastily, shoulders trembling as if bracing for an impact she'd anticipated for years. Caleb greeted her gently, aware of the hollow, ringing grief brings long before the confirmation arrives. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I haven't slept," she admitted, voice raw. "I kept thinking about that pendant, the pattern. She bought one like it on the road once, said it reminded her of home." She pressed a hand to her chest. "I'm scared it's her. And scared it's not. I don't know which is worse." Caleb led her to a private room. The Polaroid sat on the table. Elena approached it slowly, as though stepping toward something alive and dangerous. When her eyes landed on the image, her breath caught violently. "That's her," Elena whispered. Her fingers hovered above the photo, trembling. "That's Marisol. Older, thinner. But her. She looks scared." Caleb nodded. "We'll still run the test, but your confirmation helps more than you know." Tears spilled silently down Elena's cheeks. She pressed a fist to her mouth, fighting the sob rising in her throat. "I knew she didn't leave on her own. I knew it." Caleb let her sit, giving her the space grief demands. When she finally found her voice, she asked the question that had been clawing at her since the moment she saw the photo. "Who is he, the man next to her?" Caleb answered gently. "His name was Kenneth Harlan. He lived alone, worked as a mechanic. We think he may have had contact with Marisol shortly before she disappeared." "Contact?" Elena echoed bitterly. "She looks terrified." "We're still investigating," Caleb said. "We don't know the nature of their relationship yet." Elena shook her head. "He did something. I know it. I feel it." Her conviction sent a cold thread through Caleb's spine, because deep down he agreed with her. Later that morning, the DNA sample was processed and dental comparisons began. But even before the results returned, the town already knew. Word spread through diners, gas stations, grocery stores. The Jane Doe in the ravine might finally have a name, and the man at the center of it, the quiet, unnoticed Kenneth Harlan, was becoming the new focus of whispered fear. People who once considered him harmless now remembered strange encounters. A mechanic who worked with him years ago claimed Harlan talked to himself constantly. A neighbor recalled hearing screams one night, but dismissed them as TV sounds. A waitress said he stared too long at young women who came alone. Memories, once innocent, now mutated into something sinister. Meanwhile, Caleb returned to Harlan's journals, hoping the handwritten chaos might reveal something, anything that could explain the connection. He flipped through pages filled with loops and scratches, half-legible phrases. "She said she needed a ride. She cried again. I didn't mean to hurt her. The desert is quiet. The desert forgets." One sentence chilled him more than the rest. "I shouldn't have taken her there." "Taken her where?" Caleb slammed the journal shut, adrenaline spiking. There were places in the desert no one visited. Abandoned mines, forgotten shacks, dried-out wells. If Harlan took her somewhere else before the ravine, the story wasn't complete, not by a long shot. He gathered the team. "We're searching everything within 20 miles of the ravine," he ordered. "Every abandoned structure, every cave, every patch of land no one has touched in years. If Harlan took her somewhere, we need to find it." Teams deployed. Helicopters swept the terrain. Officers fanned out, boots crunching across brittle earth as they combed through the wasteland. Hours passed under the oppressive sun. Then a call crackled through the radio. "We found something." Caleb and Marlene raced toward the coordinates, an old storage shed, half swallowed by the desert, sun-faded wood barely holding together. The door hung crookedly. Wind moaned through the cracks. Inside, dust danced in thin beams of sunlight. Rusted tools lay in piles. A rotted cot sagged in the corner. But amid the decay, something stood out. A small metal box, locked shut, hidden beneath a tarp. Caleb pried it open. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, showing Marisol at different angles, in different clothes, different locations, some smiling, some terrified, some exhausted, some bruised. Elena's voice had been right. This wasn't a stranger's death. This wasn't an accident. This was captivity. And Harlan had documented everything. Caleb felt the ground tilt beneath him as the truth rose like a tidal wave, unstoppable and devastating. The cold case wasn't just the story of a vanished woman. It was the story of a predator hiding in plain sight, his crimes buried in the desert, waiting for the right moment to be unearthed. And the moment had come. The metal box sat open on the dusty floor, its contents spilling out like a confession too heavy to keep buried any longer. Caleb stared at the photographs, each one a punch to the gut, each one another fragment of a nightmare Marisol had lived alone. He picked up one image with trembling hands. Marisol sitting on the cot inside the shed, her eyes wide, expression hollow, fear carved deep into her bones. She looked thinner than in the Polaroid, tired, worn down, her hair messy, her wrists bruised. Beside her, in some of the photos, lay food containers, blankets, objects that suggested she had been kept there for days or weeks. Marlene knelt beside him, her voice tight. He kept her here. This wasn't a meeting gone wrong. This was imprisonment, Caleb finished, his jaw clenched. He held her captive. The shed creaked in the wind, as if reacting to the horror rediscovered inside it. Sunlight flickered through the gaps in the wood, illuminating the edges of the photos, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward the officers like accusing fingers. Caleb forced himself to look through the pictures one by one. Marisol sitting, Marisol sleeping, Marisol crying into her hands. The angles suggested she didn't know she was being photographed. Harlan had taken these stealthily, perhaps through a crack in the door, or while she was too exhausted to resist. Each photograph whispered a piece of truth that had been lost to time. And each truth was worse than the last. "How long was she here?" Marlene murmured. "Long enough," Caleb said softly. "Too long." He found no record, no note, no journal entry mentioning her directly beyond the cryptic fragments. But the shed itself, isolated, abandoned, was a cage, and Harlan had been its warden. A chill swept through the small space, cold enough to raise goosebumps on Caleb's arms. For a moment, he imagined her voice lingering here, echoing between the wood and dust, crying out for help no one ever heard. He rose suddenly, unable to stay still another second. "Bag everything, every photo, every scrap, every fingerprint. This place is a crime scene." Officers moved quickly, documenting every inch of the structure, photographing details, collecting hair strands, soil samples, even the rusted chain nailed into the floor. Its purpose clear, sickening, undeniable. As Caleb stepped outside, the desert sun beat down on him, but the warmth didn't touch him. His mind spun, replaying every detail they'd uncovered. Harlan had gone to great lengths to hide Marisol's death, but he hadn't tried to erase her presence from this place. He kept the photos. He kept the pendant. He kept her image on his shelf, as though haunted by what he'd done. Or proud. The thought tightened his chest. Hours later, back at the station, officers laid the photos on a long table under stark white lights. The images painted a timeline. Marisol alive in the shed, then progressively weaker. One photo showed her with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, staring directly into the camera. Her eyes were glassy, hollow, defeated. Elena, sitting nearby with her hands locked together tightly, stared at the photos with tears streaming silently down her face. But when she reached the last few images, something changed in her expression. Not grief, not fear, but rage. "He kept her like an animal," she whispered. "He treated her like she wasn't human." Caleb placed a hand gently on her shoulder, trying to steady her trembling. "We're going to find out what happened. Every detail, and we'll give her justice." Elena nodded, though her jaw was shaking. She deserved so much better. She was kind, she was trusting, she believed in people. Her voice cracked. She trusted the wrong one. As forensics began to analyze the photos, another team dug deeper into Harlan's life. They pulled financial records, travel logs, interviews with neighbors, old coworkers. A clearer picture of the man emerged, one that twisted everything the town believed about him. Harlan had been quiet, yes. Solitary, yes. But beneath that stillness ran something darker. He often vanished for days. He brought strangers to his house under the guise of offering help. A former coworker recalled him inviting a young woman into his truck after her car broke down, though she later claimed she escaped when he made her uncomfortable. Another man remembered Harlan's truck parked near a rest stop late at night, engine idling, but thought little of it then. Puzzle pieces scattered across years were now snapping together, forming a portrait of a predator who had stayed hidden behind a mask of harmless isolation. "This wasn't his first attempt," Marlene muttered as she reviewed the interviews. "He's done this before, or tried. But Marisol was the one who never got away," Caleb said. The realization slammed into the room like a physical blow. Elena lowered her face into her hands, shoulders shaking with silent grief. As the investigation intensified, more evidence surfaced. Grainy receipts, phone records, small clues linking Marisol to Harlan's route in the days before her disappearance. She had been traveling to Arizona from New Mexico. Reports indicated she had stopped in a nearby town for gas and a meal. Witnesses vaguely recalled seeing a man matching Harlan's description sitting near her at the diner, though none were certain enough to swear to it. Caleb traced the route on a map, dots marking diners, gas stations, rest stops, all converging toward the ravine in a grim pattern that mirrored the final path of Marisol's life. She trusted him, Caleb whispered. He offered her a ride. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she didn't want to walk in the heat. He looked harmless enough. But he wasn't. Marlene's words were sharp as broken glass. As they worked, a storm gathered outside. The wind howled against the station walls, sand whipping against the windows like fingernails. The desert had awakened, restless, mirroring the chaos unfolding inside. Suddenly, a forensic tech hurried in, holding an evidence bag. "We found something," he said, breathless. Inside the bag was a scrap of fabric, dark and torn at the edges. "Where?" Caleb asked. "In the shed, under the cot, stuck between the floorboards." Caleb took the bag, examining it closely. The fabric was coarse, faded, yet instantly recognizable. It matched the remnants of clothing found on the remains years ago. Proof, undeniable proof, that the shed wasn't just a place she had visited. It was where she had spent her final days. The room grew quiet, heavy, oppressive. Caleb felt something inside him tighten so violently it was like his lungs forgot how to work. She didn't die in the ravine, he said. He didn't kill her there. That means she was alive elsewhere, Marlene added. Alive in the shed, and then moved. Elena's face paled. He left her out there, alone, to be found years later. Caleb nodded grimly. He wanted her hidden, but not completely. He wanted distance, time, enough erosion for the truth to fade. But the truth hadn't faded. It had rooted itself in the desert, waiting for the right moment to rise. That night, after Elena left with a deputy for rest, Caleb remained in the evidence room alone, staring at the photographs spread before him. The silence pressed against him like a weight. He traced the timeline in his mind. Marisol's journey, her capture, her captivity, her death. The years of emptiness that followed, the sudden breakthrough triggered by a forgotten pendant placed in a donation box. How many other truths sat in dusty boxes waiting to be found? A soft knock came at the door. Marlene stepped in, her expression uneasy. There's something else. She held another journal. One forensic teams found buried beneath tools in the shed. Dirt-stained, water-damaged, its pages warped by time. Caleb opened it. This journal was different from the others. More coherent, more emotional. Harlan's handwriting steadier, though still trembling with anxiety. One entry made Caleb's blood run cold. She tried to escape. I chased her. She fell. I didn't mean to push. I didn't mean to... The sentence trailed off into scribbles. Marlene inhaled sharply. This is it. This confirms it. Caleb shook his head slowly. It gives us motive. It gives us a version of events, but it doesn't give us truth, not all of it. Because something in the journal unsettled him. Not just the words, but the gaps, the way Harlan avoided describing certain moments, the way he circled words like mine and belonged in earlier pages, the way the photos showed Marisol in stages of fear that didn't match an accidental death. No, something else had happened, something darker, something unspoken. And the desert, ever silent, ever watchful, hadn't given up its final secret yet. As the storm outside battered the windows, Caleb felt the case shift once more, pulling him into a new undertow of dread. The truth wasn't just disturbing, it was incomplete, and the missing pieces were the ones that would hit hardest when they surfaced. The shed wasn't the end of the story, it was only the doorway, and something darker waited beyond it. The storm raged deep into the night, pounding the desert with an intensity that felt almost symbolic, nature itself demanding the truth be dragged from the shadows. Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating the ravine, the roads, the abandoned structures connected to the case as though a spotlight had been cast over a twisted stage. Inside the station, sleepless officers drifted between coffee cups and case folders, their minds looping around the same questions that now tormented Caleb Merritt. If the shed wasn't the end, then what was? Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that Harlan's journals were only fragments, pieces from a broken mirror reflecting a distorted version of the past. The truth was there somewhere, buried within the mess of paranoid scribbles and half-sentences, but it was like trying to read a whisper trapped between screams. By morning, when the storm finally receded and the sky returned to its relentless Arizona blue, the forensic team reported their findings. The scrap of fabric under the cot matched the victim's clothing exactly. No doubt, no wiggle room. Marisol Reyes had been inside that shed. The timeline was clear. She was alive there. She suffered there. And then her body had been moved to the ravine, left to the desert's silence and time's cruelty. But the question remained, the one that twisted Caleb's thoughts into knots. Why move her? Why go through the trouble of hiding her body away from the place where she had been kept? Why not bury her near the shed or destroy the evidence entirely? Because, Caleb thought grimly, people like Harlan don't act without reason, even broken reason, even monstrous reason. While forensic teams continued their analysis, Caleb drove out to the ravine alone. The air was still heavy from the storm, the ground damp, the scent of rain clinging to the earth. He stepped across the now familiar terrain, past the rocks and brittle shrubs, toward the indentation where her body had once been found. He crouched at the exact spot where her skull had rested. The sand felt colder here, wetter, as if the storm had stirred something beneath the surface. She didn't die here, he murmured. He could almost see it, the moment Harlan carried her, lifeless or dying, bundled in something, placed gently on the ground, not tossed, not dragged, set down, with intention. Lightning flashed in Caleb's memory, the photo of her, eyes haunted, in that cot. The bruises, the exhaustion, the look of someone who already knew she was trapped in the final chapter of her life. So why bring her here? Behind him, a gust of wind surged through the ravine, scattering sand in spirals. He stood, scanning the horizon. The ravine wasn't isolated. Worn tire tracks, faint but real, had once led here. Harlan had come by vehicle. He didn't choose this place at random. Something about this location mattered. When Caleb returned to the station, drenched in sweat and frustration, Marlene met him at the doorway with urgency gripping her expression. "You're going to want to see this," she said. She led him to the evidence room, where the journals lay spread out. A forensic handwriting specialist stood nearby, flipping through pages with gloves on. "What am I looking at?" Caleb asked. The specialist pointed to a page from one of the earlier journals. previously dismissed as scattered rambling. "Look at this phrase," she said. "I brought her to the place where the others rest." Caleb's heart dropped. "Others?" he echoed. The specialist nodded grimly. "We think this might suggest he moved more than one body. We think the ravine might not be an isolated site." Silence filled the room like smoke. Marlene inhaled sharply. "Are you saying there could be more victims out there?" "We're not certain," the specialist said, "but based on his writing patterns, this wasn't metaphorical. He wasn't poetic. He wrote literally. If he said others, then he meant others." Caleb felt the ground tilt beneath him. The ravine, the place they had assumed held only one tragic secret, might have been a graveyard of invisible victims. Without waiting another second, he ordered a full excavation of the ravine. Officers cordoned off the area, heavy machinery rolled in, and forensic archaeologists from Phoenix were brought on scene. Tents were erected. The desert became the site of a grim unearthing. For hours they dug, sifted, brushed. Layers of sand peeled back like pages in a book long sealed shut. Then, just as the sun reached its peak, a shout cut across the ravine. "Something here!" Caleb and Marlene rushed over. A technician knelt beside a shallow depression where the soil appeared darker than the surrounding sand. They dug carefully, brushes sweeping dust away from the surface. Then bone emerged. Not Marisol's, not animal. A second set of human remains. Smaller, younger, no clothing, no hair. Only bones, bleached and cracked by years of desert exposure. The technician's voice was tight. Female, likely teen to early 20s, judging by decay, older than Marisol. Marlene's breath caught. He did it before. Caleb stared at the skeleton, wind whipping his jacket as the realization carved itself into him like a blade. Harlan wasn't just a captor, he was a serial predator hiding behind silence and solitude. The ravine had been a dumping ground. The desert had been swallowing victims long before Marisol. As more sand was brushed aside, another object surfaced. A single rusted bracelet, clasp broken, lying near the remains. Caleb picked it up carefully. "What is it?" Marlene asked. Caleb showed her. Another personal item, just like the pendant. By the time the sun dipped low on the horizon, screams of horror had given way to a chilling quiet as the team uncovered not one but two more sets of remains in shallow graves nearby. 3 victims in total, 3 stories erased, 3 lives ended in the same secret canyon of silence. The town's cold case had become something far more monstrous. As the bodies were transported away, word spread like wildfire. Residents locked their doors early. Mothers hurried their children inside. People whispered Harlan's name with a mixture of disbelief and dread. A man they had overlooked, dismissed as odd but harmless, had lived among them while burying his sins in the desert. Back at the station, Caleb confronted the journals again, flipping through pages with renewed urgency. He needed more motive, pattern, meaning, something. The entries grew darker the further he read, more frantic, more obsessive. One phrase repeated over and over, beneath scribbles and scratches. They wouldn't listen. They wouldn't stay. I had to keep them safe. Safe. The word poisoned Caleb's thoughts. Was that how Harlan justified it, keeping them safe in captivity? Safe from what? The world, themselves, or was it merely the illusion of a broken mind trying to justify violence? Late that evening, Elena returned to the station. She had heard the news. Her eyes were hollow, rimmed red, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "He killed others, didn't he?" Caleb didn't soften the truth. He owed her honesty. "Yes, we found 3. Elena stared at the wall, her breathing shallow. "Did any of them look like Marisol? Did they fit a pattern?" "Yes," Caleb said quietly. "Young, traveling alone, vulnerable." Elena closed her eyes. "He picked them because no one would look for them." "He underestimated you," Caleb said. She opened her eyes and something fierce burned behind them. "I should have found her sooner. I should have—" "No," Caleb interrupted, voice firm. "You did everything you could. You never stopped searching. This isn't your fault." But guilt, sharp, merciless, settled on her anyway. As she turned to leave, she paused. "Detective, the journals. Did he ever mention why he took her?" Caleb hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Fragments. Nothing fully clear, but enough to suggest he convinced himself he was helping her, that she needed him." Elena's face twisted in anger. "She needed freedom. She needed safety. She needed her family." Caleb didn't have an answer. That night, long after the station emptied and darkness claimed the desert again, Caleb remained alone, staring at the evidence board now covered with photos of victims, maps, timelines, scribbled connections, and Harlan's haunted face. But one photo stood out, the Polaroid, Marisol beside Harlan, fear woven into her smile. Caleb leaned in, studying the background again, the workshop tools, the wood paneling, the faint reflection in a piece of metal behind them. Then he saw it, barely noticeable, almost invisible, but real. A shadow, a figure, standing behind them. Someone else had been there. Not Harlan, not Marisol, someone unknown. Caleb's heart slammed against his ribs. This wasn't done. This wasn't over. Harlan wasn't alone. And the darkest secret of the cold case was still buried somewhere out in the desert. The shadow in the Polaroid gnawed at Caleb like a whispered warning replaying in a dark room. It was small, faint, barely distinguishable in the reflection of a metal tool behind Marisol and Harlan. But it was there, unmistakably human in outline, a shoulder, the curve of a head, a shape that had no reason to be in the workshop unless someone else had been present, someone they had never accounted for, someone who might still be out there. Caleb enlarged the photo again and again, each time zooming in until the pixels blurred, then sharpening the image, adjusting contrast, filtering light, doing anything he could to force clarity out of the haze of time. The figure never came fully into focus, but it never disappeared. It clung to the edge of the frame like a phantom refusing to let go. He felt the temperature of the room drop. He backed away from the photo board, heartbeat rising with the kind of dread that doesn't announce itself with loudness, but with a slow creeping certainty. They had assumed Harlan acted alone. They had assumed the horror ended with him, but the Polaroid whispered otherwise. When Marlene returned from the ravine site late that evening, exhausted and dust-coated, Caleb gestured for her to come closer. "Look at this," he said quietly. She leaned in, squinting. "That's someone else, definitely." Caleb nodded, "Which means everything we thought we understood about the timeline, about his methods, it's incomplete. Someone else was with them." Marlene's jaw tightened. "An accomplice? Or someone worse," Caleb murmured. "Someone who taught him, someone who directed him, someone he was afraid of." A silence heavier than any desert storm pressed between them. "We need to reopen everything," Marlene said finally. "Every witness statement, every neighbor report, every complaint about noise or visitors at his property, there is someone we missed. And they might still be in this town," Caleb added. The thought settled like poison in both their minds. The next morning, the town woke to a new wave of fear, a fear deeper and more primal than the shock of discovering multiple victims, because whispers now spread along sidewalks and cafe counters. If Harlan didn't act alone, who else had been walking among them all those years? People began scanning faces differently. The friendly cashier, the retired mechanic, the quiet neighbor who lived 3 houses down. Suspicion threaded its way into even the most innocent spaces. Meanwhile, Caleb and Marlene began tearing through every record tied to Harlan's life. They looked at friends, co-workers, clubs, acquaintances, anyone who had crossed his orbit. But the deeper they dug, the stranger the patterns became. Very few people remembered Harlan ever socializing. He didn't attend barbecues, didn't join anyone for drinks, didn't talk much, didn't date. His interactions were minimal, superficial, forgettable. But there were oddities. A few neighbors recalled seeing someone leaving his property late at night, a tall figure wearing a hat, always walking quickly. Some said they thought it was Harlan himself. Others weren't sure. The descriptions varied. Sometimes the figure limped, sometimes not. Sometimes the figure wore work boots, sometimes sneakers. One thing was consistent. No one ever saw the person's face. Caleb pieced the sightings together, creating a timeline of when the shadow figure might have been present, but the timeline didn't align with Harlan's known movements. There were nights when Harlan was documented as working at the mechanic shop, yet the neighbors still saw someone leaving his house, meaning someone else had access to his property. Someone else had reason to be there. Someone else had been inside that workshop, inside that shed, inside the darkest corners of the cold case. At noon, Elena returned to the station, determined to understand every detail of her sister's final days. She stood beside the evidence board, staring at the Polaroid again. "That shape," she said, pointing at the shadow. "That's not him. That's someone taller." Caleb felt a chill at how quickly she noticed. "You're certain?" "I'm her sister," Elena said. "I know how tall she was. I know how tall he was from the photos. This person stood farther back, but their shoulder line is higher. Someone else was there." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but fury. "They watched her," Elena whispered. "They were in the room. They saw what he did to her, and they let it happen." Caleb placed a folder on the table. "We're going to find out who they are." Elena's eyes sharpened with resolve. "Good, because I won't let my sister's story end with the wrong monster." The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A fingerprint. Not on the pendants, not on the journals, not on the tools, but on the metal box itself, the one full of photographs. A partial print, smudged but viable enough for reconstruction. Within hours, the forensic lab called back. "We have a match," the technician said. "Not to Harlan, to someone else." Caleb felt the ground shift under his feet. "Who?" There was a pause, followed by a name neither he nor Marlene had ever heard. "Thomas Greer." Caleb wrote it down slowly. "Who is he?" "Previous address not far from Harlan's. Former co-worker at a repair shop 10 years ago. Arrested twice, once for assault, once for trespassing. No current address on file." "And relation to Harlan?" Caleb pressed. "Unknown, but they were in the same circles for a while." A cold ripple went through Caleb's chest. "Send everything you have, now." He hung up and turned to Marlene, who was already pulling up records. "Thomas Greer," she said, "moved here in the early 90s. Lived alone, quiet. Neighbors said he was odd. Same profile as Harlan almost, but more volatile." "Did he disappear?" Caleb asked. "Looks like he left town about a year after Marisol's death," Marlene said. "No forwarding address, no new employment records, nothing." "He ran," Caleb said. "He knew what Harlan did. Maybe he was part of it. Maybe he feared the police getting too close." But why didn't Harlan mention him, Marlene asked. Not in the journals, not in photos, nowhere. Caleb stared at the Polaroid again, because he wasn't someone Harlan talked about. He was someone Harlan feared. The idea hit the room like a dropped hammer. The accomplice wasn't just a partner, he might have been the one pulling the strings. By evening, they were knocking on old doors, neighbors, co-workers, clerks, anyone who might remember Thomas Greer. Most answers were vague, others conflicted, a few were haunting. One elderly neighbor recalled hearing two men arguing loudly at Harlan's property years ago. The shouting shook her awake. She'd looked out her window and seen a tall man, thin, with a slight limp storming across the yard. She assumed it was Harlan at the time, but in hindsight she wasn't sure. A former coworker described Greer as strange, controlling, territorial, someone who didn't like when others talked back. He'd been fired from the mechanic shop after an incident where he held a wrench to someone's throat. Charges were dropped when the victim refused to testify. A gas station owner claimed he once saw Greer and Harlan together, standing outside late at night talking in hushed tones. The owner hadn't thought much of it then. Just two strange men in a desert town, but now he remembered something else. Greer doing most of the speaking, Harlan nodding, shoulders hunched. A hierarchy. The more they learned, the more a disturbing picture formed. Greer wasn't hiding in the shadows. He was the shadow, and he had vanished. That night, Caleb sat alone in his office, staring at the photo one more time. He traced the shadow with his finger, its blurred outline, its height, the eerie stillness of it. A figure captured by accident, a specter hiding in the background of a nightmare. The storm outside had faded, but a different kind of storm grew inside him. Someone else had been present during Marisol's captivity. Someone else had walked in and out of that shed. Someone else had stood behind Harlan like a puppeteer watching his puppet break apart. And now that person was out there, somewhere, watching, waiting, listening to the town panic. He wasn't done, he wasn't caught, he wasn't finished. Caleb leaned back, feeling the weight of the revelation press against his ribs. The cold case wasn't a case anymore. It was a hunt, and the most dangerous predator wasn't the one they'd already found buried under years of dust. It was the one still breathing, still moving, still hiding behind a shadow. Something shifted in the town the moment the name Thomas Greer entered the investigation. It was as if a second shadow had peeled itself from the darkness and settled over every street, every porch light, every cracked sidewalk leading out into the desert. People whispered more carefully, locked doors earlier, watched strangers longer. Because Harlan had been unsettling, but Greer was unknown, faceless, a ghost who had once stood behind a predator and then vanished without leaving so much as a trail of dust. Caleb didn't sleep that night. Not even for a moment. He replayed every detail they had uncovered. Harlan's journals, the shed, the graves in the ravine. But now everything had a different slant, a different flavor. If Greer had been involved, if he had stood silently behind Harlan while Marisol suffered, then the case had never been about a single monster. It had been about two, maybe more. And that changed everything. Just after dawn, Marlene pushed open the office door, a folder clenched in her hand. "We've got something," she said, though her voice carried no triumph, only apprehension. Caleb rubbed the exhaustion from his eyes. "What is it?" "A lead, maybe." She set the folder down and opened it. Inside were half a dozen documents, old property records, arrest reports, witness statements that had never been cross-referenced because, at the time, they didn't matter. "This," Marlene said, tapping an address circled in red, "is a property owned by Greer's father, abandoned for years, out near the old mining road about 15 miles from the ravine." Caleb straightened. "Greer lived there?" "Not officially, but neighbors say they saw lights on sometimes, heard noises, thought squatters were using it." "Noises?" Caleb pressed. Marlene nodded grimly. "Screaming. Once. A long time ago, but no one reported it because they assumed it was coyotes or drunk teenagers." The words sank into the air like a stone dropped into deep water. Screaming. Lights. A remote location near the ravine. Another place Harlan never mentioned. "Get a team," Caleb said. "We're going." The property lay at the end of a desolate road sliced through sun-baked earth. Scrub brush clawed at the tires as the convoy approached, dust swirling in thick clouds behind them. The house itself was a sagging structure of warped wood and rusted metal, its windows shattered, its roof collapsing inward, its door hanging crookedly like a broken jaw. But even before the officers stepped out, Caleb felt it, the wrongness. The air around the house was unnaturally still, as though the desert itself were holding its breath. Marlene approached cautiously, hand on her holster. "Looks abandoned." "Abandoned doesn't mean empty," Caleb replied, "or untouched." The team split. Two officers circled the perimeter while Caleb and Marlene entered through the front door. The smell hit them first. Dust, rot, and something else. Something metallic, something stale. The interior was chaos. Overturned furniture, broken glass, footprints overlapping across the dirt-covered floor. But among the mess, something caught Caleb's eye. A set of fresh tracks. Not decades old. Not weathered. Recent. Thin, uneven, slightly dragging, as though made by someone with an old injury. Someone who limped. Marlene saw it too. Greer. They moved deeper into the house. Sunlight cut through boarded windows in thin, prison bar-like stripes. The walls bore gouges, deep, erratic, carved with fury. Claw marks, tools, it didn't matter. Pain lived here. A noise broke the silence, a faint creak from beneath them. Caleb froze, then looked at the floorboards. Some were newer than others, recently replaced or perhaps recently disturbed. Basement, he whispered. They searched until they found the trap door, half hidden beneath a tattered rug. Marlene grabbed the handle. It groaned loudly as it opened, dust spiraling upward like smoke from a long-dead fire. A set of wooden steps descended into darkness. The air below was colder. Caleb led the way. Their flashlights cut through the pitch-black space. The basement was larger than expected. Wide, cavernous, the walls lined with shelves, old tools, boxes, empty jars, and in the far corner, Caleb, Marlene breathed. A chair with straps, leather straps, bolted to the wood, the kind used to restrain someone, or many someones. The air seemed to thicken around them. Sweat prickled the back of Caleb's neck as he moved closer. The straps were cracked but intact, and beside the chair lay something half buried under dust. A shoe, small, feminine. Caleb swallowed hard. Bag it. Marlene's flashlight swept the room, and its beam fell upon the wall behind the chair. Words were scrawled across the wood in black marker, some legible, some smeared, some overlapping like frantic pleas written by multiple hands. Help! Stop! Please, I'm sorry, don't leave me here. He's not alone. The last sentence made Caleb's stomach twist. He's not alone. Footsteps above them made both officers spin around, rapid, heavy, not cautious. Someone was in the house. Caleb whispered urgently, lights off. They killed their flashlights and pressed into the shadows. Above them, the footsteps moved slowly from room to room, boards groaning under the weight. The steps were unsteady, uneven, like a man dragging one leg. Greer. He was here. Caleb motioned silently toward the stairs, but before they could move, the footsteps stopped directly above the trapdoor. The house went utterly silent. Not even the wind dared whisper. Then the trapdoor slammed shut. Darkness swallowed them whole. Marlene whispered, he knew we were here. Caleb's pulse hammered against his ribs. He's blocking the exit. A dull thud hit the boards overhead, followed by another. He was pushing something heavy across the trapdoor, maybe furniture, debris, anything to trap them underground. Marlene reached for her radio. Static filled the silence. No signal, she whispered. The basement walls seemed to close in, the fetid air tightening around them. Caleb forced himself to breathe evenly. He scanned the darkness for another exit, ventilation, a crawl space, anything, but the room was sealed tight. They were trapped. A sound echoed faintly, footsteps retreating, then silence again. He's gone, Marlene whispered. No, Caleb swallowed hard. He's waiting. Because men like Greer didn't flee. They watched, they calculated, they hunted in silence. Caleb moved toward the back wall, feeling for weaknesses. Help me find another way out. He's not coming back down here without something planned. They searched every inch, fingertips grazing cold concrete, splintered beams, rusted pipes. Then Marlene stopped, tapping her flashlight against a section of wall until it flickered back to life. There, she said. A small, rectangular opening near the floor, covered by a wooden plank. Caleb yanked at it. The wood snapped after a few pulls, revealing a narrow crawl tunnel leading into darkness. Where do you think it goes? Marlene asked. Caleb shook his head. Doesn't matter, it's our only way out. They crawled into the passage, the tight space forcing them low. Dust filled their lungs, roots brushed the ceiling. The tunnel angled downward, twisting like the burrow of an animal, claustrophobic, suffocating. Minutes passed, long, choking minutes, until a sliver of light appeared ahead. Caleb pushed forward faster, emerging into a shallow recess in the earth. The exit opened into a rocky formation behind the house, almost invisible unless someone knew exactly where to look. Greer knew, Harlan knew, and now Caleb and Marlene knew too. The moment they stepped into daylight, Marlene grabbed her radio again. This time the signal crackled to life. This is Torres. We have a situation, she said quickly. Possible suspect on site. Officers need to converge on the abandoned property immediately. They waited, no gunfire, no shouting, no footsteps. By the time backup arrived and officers stormed the house, Greer was gone, vanished, not a trace left, no footprints, no tire marks, no discarded items. Nothing but the echo of his presence in that basement and the sickening knowledge that he'd been aware of them every second they were there. As officers swept the property, Marlene turned to Caleb. He knew we were coming. He must have been watching the place. Caleb stared out at the jagged horizon. No, he wasn't just watching the place. He scanned the hills, the brush, the rocks. He was watching us. A gust of wind ripped across the desert, filling the silence with a low moan. Thomas Greer was out there. He had seen their cars, seen their arrival, seen them find the basement, seen them crawl away. And he had left without panic, because he wasn't running from them. He was letting them know the hunt had begun. Caleb felt the truth lodge in his chest like a blade. Harlan had been the beginning, the ravine was the surface, the basement was the doorway. And the real horror, the real predator, was still moving in the desert, watching them from the shadows. Not fleeing, not hiding. Waiting. The desert has a way of swallowing sound, muffling footsteps, erasing presence. A man could walk a mile from you and never leave so much as a whisper behind. That was the danger now. The vast silence stretched out around them, and somewhere inside it, a predator moved with deliberate patience. Thomas Greer was no longer a name on paper. He was real. He had stood above them in that house, listening to the boards creak under his own weight. He had sealed them inside that basement. He had watched their flashlights from the cracks in the floor. And he had slipped away before backup arrived, leaving nothing but the chilling certainty that he was still near. Caleb stood outside the property long after the other officers cleared the rooms and declared the scene empty. The sun dipped low, staining the mountains orange and blood red. A wind swept across the dirt, carrying the scent of old timber and something else, fear, lingering like smoke. "This isn't over," Marlene said quietly behind him. Caleb didn't turn. He wanted us to know he was there. "Why?" she asked. "Because he's not afraid of us," Caleb said. "He thinks he's smarter, and maybe he is, for now." He finally turned toward her, but he made one mistake. Mistake? He let us walk out of that basement alive. Marlene exhaled slowly. Maybe he wanted that. Caleb didn't answer, not because he disagreed, but because the possibility chilled him to the bone. A man like Greer didn't leave survivors without intention. Every move he made reeked of strategy, calculation. He'd lived in the shadows for years, evading suspicion while standing right next to a killer like Harlan. That kind of man didn't make careless choices. He made messages. Back at the station, officers combed through Greer's old records again, searching for anything they had missed. Caleb pinned the shadow outline from the Polaroid onto the board, placing it beside the list of victims. The blurred figure loomed over every piece of evidence now, a warning embedded in every photo, a presence that reached through time. Elena watched from across the room, arms wrapped tightly around herself. She had refused to go home, refused to rest. Every hour that passed without answers seemed to carve deeper lines of exhaustion into her face. "Do you think he killed her too?" she asked quietly. Caleb turned to her, his expression softening. "We won't stop until we know exactly what role he played." Her voice trembled with sharp emotion. "Don't soften it for me. If that man was there, if he watched her, if he let her die, then he's as guilty as Harlan." Caleb nodded. "You're right." But he also knew something darker, something he didn't dare say aloud. Some predators don't merely watch, they direct. Hours passed with no new leads, no sightings, no reports. Greer was a ghost, moving silently, unseen, untraceable. The team grew restless as night settled in again, stretching its cold fingers across the desert floor. Around 2 a.m., a deputy rushed in carrying a laptop. "We pulled something from the old surveillance logs," he said breathlessly. "This wasn't in the system before. It must have been in a corrupted archive." He placed the laptop on the table and hit play. A grainy black and white video flickered to life. The footage came from a security camera mounted on a gas station 2 towns away. Date stamped 1996, a few months before Marisol vanished. Marisol appeared in the frame, smiling politely at the cashier paying for a drink. She seemed relaxed, unaware of the danger hovering just out of sight. Behind her, through the window, stood a tall man leaning against a truck, blurry, out of focus, but unmistakably similar to the shadow in the Polaroid. "Greer." Caleb froze. The breath left his lungs in a single sharp exhale. Greer wasn't just present near the time of Marisol's disappearance. He had been tailing her, watching her, waiting. The video continued. Marisol exited the gas station. As she walked past the truck, Greer lifted his head, not quickly, not urgently, but slowly, like a predator acknowledging the moment prey wandered into range. Then he followed her. The footage ended. The room was silent. "Elena," Caleb whispered, "I'm so sorry you have to see this." Elena stared at the screen, eyes burning with fury and grief. "He hunted her," she said, voice shaking. "Before she ever met Harlan, he found her first." Caleb nodded slowly. "It changes everything. Because if Greer had marked Marisol before Harlan entered her life, then the roles might have been reversed from what they'd assumed. Harlan hadn't chosen the victim. Greer had. The lead lit a fire under the investigation. Officers checked property records, gas station logs, nearby motel stays from the same dates. They found nothing concrete, but patterns emerged. Sightings of a tall man with a limp became more frequent the closer they got to the timeline of Marisol's disappearance. Caleb mapped each sighting on a board. When he connected the dots, a shape formed, not random, but circular. Greer hadn't been drifting. He'd been orbiting around the ravine, around the shed, around the town, as if guarding something, protecting a secret buried in the desert. Marlene stared at the map. "He stayed close all these years?" Caleb nodded. "Close enough to watch. Close enough to know if we ever found anything. And close enough," she added grimly, "to know exactly when to run." But he hadn't run, Caleb realized. Not really. He had simply repositioned himself, like a hunter adjusting his vantage point. Elena approached the map shakily. "What does he want now?" Caleb hesitated. "We don't know." But deep inside, he feared he did. A man like Greer doesn't watch an investigation unfold because he's afraid. He watches because he is planning. Near dawn, an officer burst into the station breathless. "Detective, you need to come outside." Caleb followed him out the front doors. A single envelope lay in the parking lot, its edges weighed down by a small rock to keep it from blowing away in the wind. No footprints led to it, no tire marks, just the envelope in the desert air. Caleb picked it up. His pulse thundered. Inside was a Polaroid. But not an old one. A new one. Taken hours ago. The image showed the basement from Greer's father's property, the same basement Caleb and Marlene had escaped from. Same chair, same straps, same walls covered with desperate scribbles. But this time the photo captured something else. A shape in the corner. Blurry. Tall. Human. Watching the camera. Watching whoever took the photo. Watching Caleb. Marlene inhaled sharply. "He went back," she whispered. "He never left," Caleb said. Elena approached slowly. "What is he trying to tell us?" Caleb didn't immediately answer. He stared at the Polaroid, at the shadowed figure standing in the darkness like a sentinel guarding a secret too vile to name. Then he understood. "He's taunting us," Caleb said, "like mocking us, letting us know he decides when we see him." "Why?" Marlene asked. "What's the point?" Caleb exhaled, a slow, heavy breath that felt like it carried the entire case on its back. "Because," he said quietly, "we're in his game now." The desert wind rose again, swirling dust into small spirals that skittered across the parking lot as if the land itself shivered at the realization. The cold case wasn't unraveling. It was awakening, and the man who lived in its deepest shadows was no longer content to hide. He wanted to be seen. He wanted to be chased. He wanted to be followed into the darkness. The hunt had shifted, and now it was Caleb who felt watched. Morning crept into the desert like an intruder, pale light crawling across the jagged horizon, revealing the kind of stillness that hides danger instead of soothing it. Caleb stood alone in the station parking lot, the Polaroid in his hand, feeling the weight of its message sink into him like a stone dropping into black water. Greer wasn't running. Greer wasn't hiding. He was communicating, watching, choosing his moments with the precision of someone who understood not only the landscape but the minds of those chasing him. Marlene stepped out beside him, her face drained, her voice barely steady. "He wants us afraid." Caleb shook his head slowly. "Not afraid, alert." "What's the difference?" "He wants us active. He wants reaction." Caleb looked down at the Polaroid again. The blurred figure in the corner, the straps on the chair, the scrawled pleas on the wall. "He's provoking us. This is a game to him." Marlene swallowed hard. "What's his next move?" Caleb exhaled. "Whatever it is, it won't be subtle." Inside the station, tension coiled like a live wire. Officers whispered in clusters. Phones rang unanswered. The air felt charged, brittle, as though the walls themselves were waiting for something to break. Elena sat at the far end of the room, gripping a styrofoam cup she hadn't taken a single sip from. Her eyes were locked on the evidence board, but her mind was somewhere else, somewhere darker. Caleb approached her gently. "You should rest." "I won't," she said, her voice sharp but fragile. "He's out there. He's alive. And he watched us. Watched me walk into this station, watched everything." Caleb sat beside her. "We have protection patrols on the streets, units watching entry points. He won't get near you." "You don't understand," Elena whispered, leaning closer. "Men like him don't need to get near you. They just need you to know they can." That truth settled heavily between them. Caleb placed a folder on the table. "I want you to look at something, only if you're ready." She hesitated, then nodded. Inside were grainy stills from security cameras, small roadside markets, old motels, rough parking lots. Each image captured a tall man with a slight limp, sometimes in shadow, sometimes wearing a cap, sometimes looking directly into the lens with an expression that almost seemed amused. Elena's breath caught. "That's him." "We think so," Caleb said softly. He was following Marisol before she met Harlan. Elena closed her eyes, pain rippling across her features. She didn't have a chance. Caleb didn't speak. He didn't need to. By afternoon, a task force assembled in the briefing room. Maps covered the walls, roads, canyons, service routes, old mines, forgotten shacks. Helicopters scanned the desert from above while deputies in tactical gear canvassed abandoned areas. But the landscape was vast, and Greer knew it far better than any of them. Still, Caleb ordered every search, every sweep, every perimeter check. Searching for someone who had no address, no vehicle registration, no bank activity, nothing tethering him to the world except a legacy of destruction. Hours passed, nothing. Then, just after dusk, a call crackled over the radio, sharp, frantic. "Dispatch, we found something, about 10 miles south of the ravine. You need to send Merritt, now." Caleb and Marlene drove hard through the fading light, tires slicing through dust. When they arrived, 2 deputies stood near a dirt pull-off by the main highway. One pointed toward a cluster of rocks near a shallow ditch. "He left this." Caleb crouched beside the rocks. A boot print, fresh, deep, the tread uneven, matching the limp. And beside it, something worse. A strand of hair, long, dark. "Elena," Marlene whispered. "He's sending a message to her." Caleb didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the fear coiling in his stomach told him the truth. Greer was no longer provoking the investigation. He was focusing on Elena, the sister of the woman he took, the only one who still defied his shadow. He's escalating, Caleb murmured. Escalation means he's preparing for something. Or someone, Marlene replied. They bagged the evidence, took photos, documented everything. But as they stepped away from the ditch, Caleb noticed something half buried in the dust, a small object glinting dully beneath the dying light. He knelt. A coin, old, scratched. He turned it over. A small G was carved crudely into the metal. Oh, God, Marlene whispered. He's marking territory. No, Caleb said. He's marking a path. When they returned to the station, Elena was pacing. The moment she saw their faces, her expression collapsed. You found something. We found signs he's been watching the route, Caleb said gently, but nothing that indicates he's close. Elena's eyes darkened. He's close. Caleb didn't deny it. We're increasing patrol units around the station and your hotel, he told her. You'll have officers at every exit, every hallway, every floor. Elena stared at him with trembling intensity. Do you think that will stop him? Caleb opened his mouth, then closed it. The truth was cruel and simple. I think it will slow him down, he said. She nodded once. Then I'll take it. But as Caleb turned to walk away, Elena spoke again, softly, like a confession. Detective, I don't think he's going after me. Caleb froze. What do you mean? Elena's voice cracked. Men like him. They don't go after the adults. They go after the ones who can't fight back. A cold wave rolled through Caleb's chest. Who? He demanded. Elena swallowed. Anyone he thinks resembles her. Anyone he thinks fills the void she left. He isn't looking at me. He's looking at the past, and he's trying to recreate it. Caleb felt the blood drain from his face. He's hunting for another victim. Marlene's hand flew to her mouth. We need to alert the county. Go door to door. Every house with a young woman. No. Caleb shook his head. That won't work. He won't snatch someone from inside a home. He's too cautious. He'll look for someone who's alone, vulnerable, mobile. Elena was right, Marlene whispered. Marisol was a traveler. Caleb's eyes narrowed. So he'll look for someone like that again. A young woman passing through, a tourist, a student, a hitchhiker, someone on the road. A shiver went down Caleb's spine as he reached for the map. What's the nearest area with travelers, not local? Marlene circled a location. The highway rest stop, 15 minutes from here. Always busy, always people moving in and out. Caleb grabbed his coat. We're going, now.